How have other number one overall picks who jumped straight to the NHL produced over the past 20 seasons, and what can we set as realistic expectations for Macklin Celebrini?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be exploring how other number one overall picks who went straight into the NHL, how they perform. So we're looking at basically from Sidney Crosby on. Went through, did all the homework, got all the numbers, crunched the numbers. We're going to be kind of seeing what these guys did and kind of trying to kind of figure out what are realistic expectations for Macklin Celebrini. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So when I was going through this process, one of my biggest things I kind of took away was how many first overall picks actually even go straight to the NHL, especially over the last, I really wanted like the Sidney Crosby era on, right? So kind of everybody who has been one of, since the lockout, and Sidney Crosby especially, right? Because that is kind of the comp for Macklin Celebrini. So going through, basically 20 years of guys here, there hasn't been too many who basically didn't make the jump. You have Owen Power, of course, who was picked 2021, went back for another year at Michigan. And then you have basically everybody except for Eric Johnson, who is, a defenseman for the first overall pick for the Blues back in 2006. Other than that, everybody else, boom, straight to the NHL. So yes, it's a pick, that we have total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 players over this time span who have gone number one overall pick straight to the NHL. So I wanted to kind of see a very raw, like point predict, how many goals did they score? How many points do they score? How many points per game do they score? Because not everyone played the same amount of games. We had a lockout season in there as well. What was their average time on ice? So just very raw, like kind of basic statistics, especially because, a lot of these early years, there's not that much for analytics. I didn't want to kind of try to mix like their Corsi 4 with teams, especially the early years of not having those numbers available. So I kind of wanted to keep the same baseline for everything. So as I pull up on the screen here's everybody. So you have Conor Bedard, Yaroslav Koski, Alexei Lafreniere, Jack Hughes, Rasmus Dahlin, Nico Hischier, Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, Aaron Ekblad, Nathan McKinnon, of course, everyone's favorites, Nail Yakupov, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Taylor Hall, John Tavares, Steven Stamkos, Patrick Kane, Sidney Crosby. So the first thing is like Macklin Celebrini is like in really good company because there's a lot of like excellent players in here. And like The only guy who's you could really consider a bust is Yakupov, who's the right winger that Edmonton picked in the 2012 draft. Everybody else is on their way to. I mean, I know Alexei Lafreniere has had a little bit of a up and down start, but has really, I think, kind of solidified himself this year. Same thing with Slavkovsky. Rough rookie season, as we'll get to here in a little bit, but then solidified him. I think really solidified himself and earned himself an extension, a big extension. But all these other players are like really good players, if not amazing players. Like it makes you feel much better about, well, not much better, but it makes you feel good about the type of type of players that Macklin Celebrini is kind of going to be mentioned among. So in here, I also kind of color coded them. So everybody in gold is a center. Everybody in blue, like kind of the dark blue, is a left wing. All the both defensemen. So we only had two, Rasmus Dahlin and Aaron Ekblad, who went straight to the NHL. So those guys are in green, and then the kind of tealish color is the right wingers. We had two of those, and Kane and Yakupov, but mostly centers we'll kind of dig into those a little bit more. But there's a wide variety of guys, how many points were scored, how many kind of their points per game, average time on ice, like all this stuff here. But I think the big takeaway though is like you're in really good company here with you have Conor Bedard and Jack Hughes and Austin Matthews and McDavid and McKinnon, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Like there's just a ton of really, really great players in this group here, and like that should make you feel pretty good about kind of what it should be expected for Macklin Celebrini this year, not only this year, but kind of long term as well. And we're going to look at kind of next, we'll look at, what type of seasons they kind of, who had the best seasons and everything like that. And we'll kind of go into, what are some of the common or kind of the average and stuff like that. But, I think the worst season out of here is Yaroslavl Slavkovsky's season, where he played 39 games and where he got hurt. He had 4 goals, 6 assists, and 10 points. And you can go with Jack Hughes as probably the second worst season. And the Devils have basically kind of come out and said, yeah, if we probably could have done it again, we probably would have sent him, not had him come straight out. And I think that's Jack Hughes is kind of a big reason why Will Smith's been comped to them, to Jack Hughes a lot. Why he went back to Boston College to kind of not have to deal with that, especially with the Devils, who were a very young team. You had Hischier, who was picked at first overall, 2 seasons ago, or 2 seasons before Jack Hughes did. But like, overall, though, you're seeing a lot of guys making big impacts right away for their teams. And I know everyone's gonna say, well, the Sharks are bad. All these other teams are bad too. Like you don't get the first overall pick unless you're one of the worst teams. And I know the lottery rules have changed a lot more to be a lot more favoring to kind of the bad teams to stay in those top picks over the past couple of seasons. But still, like, you're not getting a top pick unless you're one of or among the worst teams in the NHL, and these young players are going to these young teams and bad teams to kind of start to turn things around here. And so yeah, we're going to talk about some of the guys who had kind of some of the best seasons here and kind of what those looked like. We'll look at kind of the top goal scorers, the top point producers, all that fun stuff, and then we'll look at some kind of some numbers and averages for Macklin Celebrini. So we'll get to here in just 1 second. We're driven by the search for better. When it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So, join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Let's go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right. So what can let's look at some of the like best of here seasons. So, and I think you have to start with the goal scorers. Austin Matthews hit the ground running with 40 goals. And we know Austin Matthews really good at scoring goals, as you know, he's led the league in scoring, last year led the league with 69 goals. Very nice. Like he's been a goal scoring machine since he touched ice in the NHL. 40 goals, it's pretty ridiculous. Realistically don't expect Macklin Celebrini to be around 40 goals, especially with the talent around San Jose. Sidney Crosby, 39 goals. We'll talk more about his rookie season here in a little bit. Then you have Nathan McKinnon and John Tavares both at 24 goals, and Steven Stamkos at 23 goals. And those numbers will sound much more realistic for Macklin Celebrini and kind of realistic expectations for him. But Austin Matthews putting up 40 goals is absolute bonkers. But it's not like he hasn't kind of come in here and continued to just put up a bajillion goals every season that he has played with the Leafs. So maybe he can't do it in the playoffs, but regular season, Austin Matthews is going to score a bajillion goals every year. So that's how things started, and that's how things have gone for Matthews. So looking at the top point scorers in Sidney Crosby, look at that young, if you're watching on YouTube, found photos from their rookie season. So very young Sidney Crosby put up 102 points his rookie season. Bonkers. Again, the Sharks have had what, 200-point seasons in their entire franchise history. I'm double checking that. I'm fairly certain that's it, but it's, you had Joe Thornton and then you had Erik Karlsson as your like most points in a season, and I'm like, it's ridiculous. So yep, Joe Thornton, Erik Karlsson, 200-point seasons in the Sharks' entire franchise. Sidney Crosby walked in and did that day one. So, if I expect Macklin Celebrini to be a 100-point scorer at some point in his career, maybe not as soon as he walks in, but Sidney Crosby was ridiculous. I think we kind of forget, especially the younger kids, how the expectations around Crosby and the fact that he just walked in and just was like, I got this, guys. It's pretty ridiculous. So Patrick Kane, 72 points. Austin Matthews, 69. Very nice. Nathan McKinnon, 63. And then Conor Bedard, 61 points this last season, which is probably why he won the Calder. Sorry, Brock Faber fans, but it's hitting that 60-point plateau is like a big deal, especially as a rookie. Right now, we're talking about William Eklund as like, that's kind of the next plateau for him, is being that like 60-70-point player. But doing it, remember, these guys are all like 18, 19 years old walking into the NHL, especially when you're the first overall draft pick. And to do those type of numbers as a teenager, it's really, really, really special type of performances from these kids. So just something to keep in mind when we're talking about like Celebrini and like what his actual expectations are and what realistic kind of production numbers should be for Celebrini. Like, it's not easy to just walk in and be like, I'm going to put up 60 points in a season, and just kind of be that guy. And the Sharks again are going to be a very young team, and that's all by design for San Jose and Mike Greer. But like these are the 5 best seasons, 5 in terms of points in the last basically 20 years, and you have 5 of them, some of them just barely cracking the 60-point mark here. So that's again ridiculous seasons. So points per game, kind of in that same mold, right? So how many points you scored by how many games you played. Sidney Crosby with a ridiculous 1.26 points per game. Ridiculous. Connor McDavid 1.07. So remember, McDavid got hurt. I think if I recall correctly, it was like a broken foot or something like that. And he only played a handful. He played 45 games. He played 45 games, had 48 points, including 16 goals and 32 assists in his first season, before getting knocked out with an injury. So McDavid 107. So we've had, and again, first overall picks, first season in the NHL. 2 guys who cracked a point per game, and they are generational players in Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. Like, it just doesn't happen. And then Conor Bedard, who's considered the next generational guy, last year put up 0.9 points per game for Chicago, and that was a pretty good feat, especially considering they were supposed to have Taylor Hall. Lost him very early in the season. Like, the team lost a lot of kind of their top end talent, and Bedard had to do a lot of stuff night in, night out. So then Patrick Kane, 0.88 points per game, and then Austin Matthews 0.84 points per game. So, I think for the Sharks fans, right, as much as we expect Macklin Celebrini to be great, those are some of the best seasons that we have seen in the past, basically 20 years of guys, again, first overall picks playing in their first season, straight into the NHL. And we've had 2 guys who crack 1 point, basically a point per game. And we've had 5 guys who are over 60 points during that time. So it is those are big numbers and tough numbers to try to get to. So I think I'm just trying to be realistic here. What are realistic expectations and averages, I guess, would be for Macklin Celebrini? So that way we're not like trying to put too much pressure on this kid already. So we'll get into what some of those averages look like. Or, if you kind of take everybody in and look at what some of those averages look like, and we'll look at specifically centers and kind of what should be some numbers that Celebrini shoots for here in just 1 second. But before we do that, do want you guys know, if once you guys are done checking out this episode, make sure you guys go check out one of the other Locked On NHL shows, especially if you're Bay Area fans, right? Go check out Locked On Niners if you want to get caught up or get ready for training camp. You got Locked On Warriors with Summer League right now. You got Locked On A's and Locked On Giants. Of course, I know it's all-star time right now, but they just had the draft. Plenty of good baseball stuff going on there. So make sure you guys go check out one of the other Locked On podcasts, wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right, let's finish up by looking at what can we actually expect for Macklin Celebrini. So here's the average of all the players, what they did their first season. So average was 69 games played. Again, some of these guys are injury. There was a season with where that was cut down to 48 games. Like there's some of that stuff kind of baked in there, but still 69 out of 82 games played, averaging 19.4 goals with 29.2 assists, so 48.6 points, so right around 50 points, with a 0.69 points per game. And average time on ice was 17:26. So, but this accounts for all forwards, all defensemen. And even the defensemen, like they had decent seasons, right? Rasmus Dahlin, who's played 82 games, had 9 goals, 35 assists for 4 points. So he's maybe kind of brings the some of like the goal totals down a little bit, but he does help out the average time on ice. Ekblad in his first season had 81 games. He had 12 goals, 27 assists, 39 points. But then again, does also kind of spike up the average time on ice as he was playing almost 22 minutes a night as a 18-year-old rookie, 19-year-old rookie. So, yeah. So what about centers? And I think this gives you the most realistic, like, okay, what should we kind of expect for Celebrini? So 72.4 games played. So maybe misses 10 injuries, et cetera, et cetera. 23.3 goals, 33.5 assists, 56.8 points, 0.79 points per game with average time on ice is 17:38. And I think those are realistic numbers. I know you're going to have you have the two coins, but you have the Slavkovsky, 10 points in 40 games basically, and then you have the Sidney Crosby 100 points. So those kind of wash each other out there. But I think these are realistic numbers for Macklin Celebrini, and we'll as the summer goes on, we'll talk about kind of Calder and what he would probably need to do to put himself in that race. But I think if you walked away with Macklin Celebrini's first season, if he's right around 60 points, 20 to 25 goals, 30 to 35 assists, and he's played this, he's playing about 17, 18 minutes a night for an 18-year-old kid. Like, I think you'd feel really good about Macklin Celebrini's kind of rookie season. And so, especially again, one of the youngest players who's going to be one of the youngest the youngest player in the NHL, having just turned 18, right? A month ago now. So by the time, the season starts, he will be 18 in like 3 months or whatever. But we've seen the way he plays. And I think, at Boston University, a lot of his game is very translatable NHL wise, like his ability to create on the rush, create transition. You even saw even a slight game, bit in the prospect scrimmage game, but his ability to just kind of get the puck and get that they're going. And assuming Tyler Toffoli is on his wing, which don't know why you wouldn't put Tyler Toffoli on his wing because their games are just perfectly meshed for each other. I can see a world where maybe it's like 20 goals, but maybe it's closer to 40 assists because of the way Celebrini is able to pass and create offense. And if Tyler Toffoli is just, kind of riding along on the rush and just crushing one-timers, like that seems like a potential offense for the Sharks, at least better than what we've seen over the past couple seasons, excluding Erik Karlsson's wizardry. And like that's feel, and if he's playing second line minutes, especially to start, and then as the season goes on, if Granlund gets traded or Celebrini eventually kind of takes the 1C role, I don't picture Ryan Warsofsky kind of just throwing him in there right away. I think that's why they wanted to keep Granlund for another season. That's why you have Wenberg, and if Logan Couture comes back healthy, like it's okay to have him play second line minutes, and I don't want to say shelter him, but put him in a position to succeed, right? We saw especially learning experience, I think, from Conor Bedard last year, where he got stripped away of all the like Taylor Hall, who is supposed to be a big part of that team, right? And they lose him basically in the first week of the season. Nick Foligno, who got hurt for a chunk of the season too. And he had to do a lot. And I know, of course, the big debate was, well, his plus minus stinks. Well, of course, his plus minus stinks. That was the second worst team in the NHL. Of course, his plus minus is going to stink, and he's playing 1,000 minutes a night. Conor Bedard last year was playing almost 20 minutes a night, and he put up 61 points in 68 games on that team. Like that's a really, really insane season for, again, an 18-year-old kid who had was supposed to have his running mate got taken away a week into the season. So yeah, I think though, especially if the Sharks can stay healthy, and Tyler Toffoli's been a guy, knock on wood, Tyler Toffoli's been a pretty healthy guy, but I think they've done a much better job of kind of getting quality guys around him. So if it isn't Toffoli, right? Eklund's in his second season, but Eklund's played a couple years of pro hockey now between the AHL and the NHL, and going back to Sweden. Like he's got several years of pro hockey under his belt. You have Zetterlund, who had his breakout season last year and has the makings of potential 30-goal type of guy, who also likes to get going on the rush. You have Wenberg, who can play center or play wing. And if Couture is healthy, like there's plenty more. And then Will Smith, and we'll see if they put Smith and Celebrini together at some point. But there's just way more talent around Celebrini than kind of what we expected last year. I think that's a big reason why also Will Smith went back to school. But like, yeah, I fully, it's that trying to balance being cautiously optimistic, but also being like, there's a world where Celebrini could be, there is a legit world where Celebrini could be like a 70-point guy in his first season. And if he does that, like you have to realize how special of a season that is, especially when you're looking back at what other first overall picks did and their first seasons with it in the NHL, right? If Celebrini were to hit that 70-point mark, right, that's the third time. That would put him behind Crosby, Kane, and then you'd have Celebrini at 70 points. Like that's a insanely special season. And then you could be potentially talking about like we might have been underrating Celebrini, what he could potentially do for San Jose, because this team is only going to get better, right? William Eklund's only going to get better. Will Smith's only going to get better. Celebrini's only going to get better, and then you're going to start adding pieces like Musty and Holtonen and, some of the other guys that they've drafted like this, and you're going to have a ton of cap space. Like this team is only going to get better here. So, but yeah, wanted to I thought it was a fun exercise. Go through, kind of just compare some seasons there, and see how that all looks. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow where we actually have someone from the 2024 Sharks draft class join us for an interview. So make sure you guys are following along for that. You can follow wherever you get podcasts. Of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.